And path to victory. Path to victory.
So I'm here tonight to talk about the path to victory. First question is, why do we need to go down it? What's at stake? And we've heard a lot about that tonight so far from our various speakers. But let me try to put it together for you, sum it up. And I'm going to do this in a manner, I'm going to forget for a moment that I'm talking to my fellow Republicans. I'm going to try to present this in a way that would appeal to my apolitical in-laws or to my neighbors, right? Folks who aren't paying attention on a day-to-day basis, folks who aren't going to Alpha News or the Daily Wire. Why is it important to them that we go down and reach the end of that path to victory? Well, I would say number one is we're on an unsustainable path as a state. It's no joke. An $18 billion budget surplus spent. Every last thin dime gone. $10 billion in taxes raised on you, and on me. State budget increased by 40%. 40%. What goes up 40%? Your wages? Your salary? Your income? Your household budget? I know mine didn't. And speaking of household budget, let's try to put this in personal terms. Imagine your household income was around $50,000, which is a little lower than the median income in the state of Minnesota. $50,000 a year, that's what you get coming in. And let's say you're not the best with money, so you're budgeting to spend all of it every year. You've got nothing left over at the end of the year. So you're getting 50 in, 50 is going out every single year. Well, then your dream comes true. Your ship comes in. You finally win the lottery. You get that magic scratch off. Or you score on the Powerball. And now, after taxes and fees and whatever they take out, you got a cool $1 million bonus. So what do? Well, you do like a lot of people in that situation do. You spend it all, right? Every last thin dime, you go out there and you take a couple of big vacations. You buy yourself a car too. Get some bling so you can walk down to Main Street and parade yourself around for a little bit. And you also pick up a new habit because you've got all this money right now, so you're feeling pretty good about yourself. You pick up the habit of spending more money than you're making. And so let's say you kick it up to you're spending about $70,000 a year, but your job still only pays you $50,000. What's going to happen in about a year? You're going to be broke. You're going to be as broke as a bum on the street who never had a dime to his name. That is exactly what Minnesota Democrats have done to this state. A 40% increase in the budget with no reason whatsoever to believe that that money is going to come from somewhere, and spending this entire budget surplus, which was largely generated by one-time federal dollars, rained down from on high, because D.C. has that magic money printing press that you don't have, that I don't have, that the state of Minnesota doesn't have. And they're not going to keep doing that. That was the COVID scam, right? An excuse to spend trillions and trillions of dollars. That's a card you can only play so many times. And so we are in deep, deep trouble. And you know who knows that? The people whose job it is to count the pennies in state government, our auditors, our legislative auditors at least. They warned the Democrat majority, the Democrat trifecta, early this year, at the beginning of the session, you're going to go into a deficit unless you calm down on the spending this year. Well, what did they do? You think they calmed down? Anybody want to take that bet? No. They continued spending every dime they could possibly get their hands on. And we are headed in a very bad direction. On top of that, and that's just the fiscal side, right? On top of that, you look at the legislation that they passed and that they prioritized. We've already talked about the PRO Act. stripping civil rights from an entire category of human beings. If you're unborn in the state of Minnesota, you have no civil rights. None. That's the status quo today, right now. No civil rights. Anything can be done to you. We have a colleague. I look around the room, I see a lot of my legislative colleagues and friends. We have one who's not present here tonight. His name's Elliot Ingen. He's from down in Lino Lakes. He has about now probably a month and a half year old son. Was born 28 weeks. Extremely premature, right smack in the middle of the busiest time of session. He spent his time in between 12-hour legislative sessions, floor sessions, at the hospital next to his son, sleeping in a chair. That child is recognized by everyone, including our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, as a child, as a human being. They come up to him, they ask him, "How's your kid doing? Is he doing okay?" They express their concern. He's recognized as a human being. He's recognized as having rights under the law. But if he had a change of address, if he was still cooking in the womb, which at this point he would be, he would have no rights whatsoever under the laws that the Democrats passed. Mike Weiner's absolutely right. We should take this mallet from them and hit them over the head with it, metaphorically. This is our issue to win. And we can win it on their terms. They consider themselves the party of human rights, the party of human dignity. They act as if they're the ones who ended Jim Crow. Republicans did that. They act as if they're the ones who abolished slavery. Republicans did that. And you know what, speaking of, when Abraham Lincoln was arguing with Stephen Douglas about that very issue, expanding slavery into the new U.S. territories, you know what Stephen Douglas's pitch was? And by the way, he was the popular one in that contest. He was the one who everybody was behind, who everybody knew. They called him the Little Giant, I believe it was, because he was well known for his masterful rhetorical skills. His sales pitch for expanding slavery into new U.S. territories was something called popular sovereignty. If the people want it, the people should get it. Today, they call it democracy. If the people want it, the people should get it, even if it includes stripping civil rights from an entire category of human beings. That's what the Democrats did, and they tried, as Representative Knudsen brought up, to make that permanent, to put that in the state constitution. Thank God they failed. And lastly, just mockery of process. Why is it Senator Lucero brings up this box full of 1,400 pages worth of an omnibus bill that was thrown together unconstitutionally at the last minute and passed in the final hour of the legislative session when they had 2 years to do their work, and they spent much of their final 2 weeks in recess over there in the Senate? We were working, I don't know about you. Why are they able to do that so shamelessly? Why are they able to strip civil rights from the unborn against the will of their own constituents? Democrat voters, the average Democrat voter doesn't want that. Why do they push all this gender nonsense and think they can get away with it? It's because they have gotten away with it. It's because they've won the elections and they have the power. It's that simple. There are no checks and balances. There is nobody to tell them no, because they have the governor's office. They have the Senate by one member. They have the House. And as importantly, they have the court benches. They have the bureaucracy. They have the departments, the agencies, the task force, the councils, all populated by rabid left-wing activists. There's no check and no balance. And the Founding Fathers warned us about this. This is the reason why they didn't want to have political parties, frankly, ironically, standing from up here. They didn't want to have them because they were afraid of exactly this, the capture of the separation of powers and the nullification of the ability of one group to check the power of another group. Democrats have total capture of the state right now, and that's why they're emboldened to do what they're doing. So in order to correct course, the answer is simple. We have to win elections. That's it. It's no more complicated than that. We simply must win. And the good news is, it's ours for the taking. Consider these facts. We came within 0.5% of winning the Attorney General and the State Auditor in 2022. In 2022. 0.5%. We lost the Senate by 1 district under circumstances that were deeply unfortunate, where you had one Republican campaigning against another Republican, endorsing the Democrat in the final weeks, pushing the race over the edge. And all those things I listed off earlier and all those things you've heard tonight, enabled by that. Enabled by Republican on Republican violence. We only need 4 seats in the House. 4. Flipping 4 seats is the difference between stripping civil rights from human beings and ensuring we have cheap, abundant, and affordable energy. Which would you like? Pretty easy, attainable task. And we know it's attainable because in 2022, in each House district, somewhere between 2,500 and 3,500 Republicans didn't vote. That's who we got to go after. That's who we got to find. And we got to get on board with the process for doing that, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the one other thing that's looking up for us is it's a presidential year. And we got a warrior fighting for us in the name of Donald Trump. That's right. And this guy, it's amazing what he's been able to accomplish. The effect that he's had on me personally, in terms of bringing me from a relatively naive, traditionally thinking conservative activist to knowing what time it is and knowing how we need to talk about it and being unafraid to do so. And he is impacting the environment in a way that we weren't able to benefit from in 2022. He's looking at our state. He sees it as possible to take. I agree with him. The RNC is looking at investing in this state. They've never done that before. Not in any substantial manner. So Minnesota is on the map in a way that it has not been before. We can do this. So what do we need to do? We need to commit to a Republican turnout that is too big to rig. Too big to rig. You heard Mark Horan talk about election integrity? Obviously, I agree. Of course we should be cleaning the voter rolls. Of course we should be getting election judges. Of course we should be doing everything we can within the scope of the boundaries of the law to make sure that we have election integrity. But you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see a Republican turnout so huge that none of that even matters. I know for a fact that there's a functional limitation on their ability to cheat. Because Roger Scraba, who I believe is in this district, he won by 15 votes in a recount. You think the Democrats didn't want that seat? You think if they had the ability to just flip a switch and change votes or cough up some manufactured ballot somewhere, that they wouldn't have taken that district too? That they wouldn't have made it a 5-member majority as opposed to a 4? You guarantee they would if it was within their ability. It wasn't. And so what that tells me is if you do the work like Roger did, if you do the work like Krista's done, if you do the work like Natalie Zleznikar has done, then you can win, regardless of their ability to get sneaky. And so that's our job. We need to reach those 2,500 to 3,500 people per House district, get a ballot in their hand as early as possible, get it banked, and make it too big to rig. And that's what we're going to do. I'll close by just warning us of a couple of things that will make this impossible. And it's not going to be easy to hear. These aren't consultant-approved talking points. We regard the Democrats as our enemy, and in some very real ways, they absolutely are. There's no doubt about it. These people are not going to be convinced by a good argument. I broke that bad news to some of our candidates who are running for the first time this year at a recent training. I said, don't think you're going to come in here with the best argument anybody's ever put together and sell it with the best rhetorical flourish, and it's going to change a single mind. That's not how it works at the legislature. They have to be defeated. We have to beat them. And the enemies of that aren't external, they're internal. Laziness, despair, fatalism, complaining more than we contribute. These are the things we have to shy against. These are the things that will cause us to lose. I just cited an example from 2022, which is the reason why all these horrible things have happened over the past 2 years. And the laziness and despair, those can feed off one another, because if you don't want to do the work, it's really easy to come up with an excuse why you shouldn't have to. Well, it's Minnesota, it's a blue state. Right? We're not going to win anyway. They're a bunch of cheats. It's rigged. Now, I know that the people in this room aren't saddled with those doubts because you're here. You're putting your money literally where your mouth is. And I'll bet you put some shoe leather underneath it as well. And that's what we need. But as you engage with others in the community, in your families, these low propensity Republican voters who we need to get their ballots into boxes, don't tell them they're lazy, but just be cognizant of the fact that that's what you're fighting against. You're fighting against that internal devil on the shoulder who's saying, there's no point in doing this. This is a waste of my time. We're not going to win anyway. I'll just wait till Jesus comes back. I seem to recall a parable or two about what happens to the guy who just waits for Jesus to come back. Doesn't turn out very well, right? So let's not do that. Folks, you're going to determine whether or not we take our state back. You. I'll do my part, but I can't do it all. My colleagues, they'll do their part, but they can't do it all. It's going to take you doing what you're doing tonight, coughing up the cash, putting in the time, wearing out some shoes, getting ballots in boxes. If you're willing to do that, I promise you, we're going to take back the state of Minnesota. Thank you.